Welcome to the Be Meaningful podcast, an unrehearsed, unscripted conversation about a real brand in real time, with Brian and Bogey, the founders of Meaningful, an agency that helps brands find a meaningful place in the world. How do ideas occur? Where does creativity come from? These are some of the things we discuss today with Wilson Smith, design director at Nike. He shares how his plan to be an architect took an unexpected turn that transformed him into an architect of footwear, and part of a company that transcended sports to become a cultural brand.
We were sitting at a Soho house in Portland that just opened up, and we were just chit-chat. And I said, Wilson, when are you going to finally become a guest on our show? And you said, let's do it. And so here we are. We are now here on the show, and we're so happy to have you here.
Yeah.
You've had quite a career journey. You've done a number of things that are pretty interesting. We can talk about. You also have a book that you are working on, that there's, revisions of it, and we could also talk about a bit about that. So there's a lot of things we can talk about, but I think where a lot of it overlaps is kind of the creative process and creative journey. And so, I don't know, Brian, where do you want to start off?
Oh, all of it. So, yeah, talk about the swoosh there that you're brandishing. So you've had a long run at Nike, right?
Oh man, yeah, no, it's thank you. It's an honor. It's fun to be at a place where I can story tell a little bit and a little bit of my journey, and I'm honored. So thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a designer, and I've been at Nike actually 40 years, almost 41. My background is architecture, and I was initially hired there working on like stores and showrooms and kind of telling the stories of the brand through architecture, and which is also a form of context, which is almost like, say, a shoebox or any kind of context that you're telling a story. And so for us back then, it wasn't really about necessarily the shoes expressing the performance very clearly, but it was more about about just really the branding. And when I said expressing the performance, what I mean is expressing all the story, expressing so much story as we do today in products. Of course, the shoe was revealing and being more expressive about performance, but when it came to actually all the stories we can tell around products, that's something that's kind of evolved over time.
Sure.
And yeah, so that was kind of part of my journey was in architecture, doing that kind of story that way.
That's really interesting because we were talking about this just about an hour ago, Bogey and I and Lauren. And I think what people don't realize is that engineering mindset is common to all creators. Right? That pursuit of elegance, right? The form following function. And that, I mean, if you're a designer, you have that engineering mindset. Same thing with, if you're designing product or even musicians and poets are engineers of sorts, right? It's that same, and I think that's what's cool is that the engineering mindset, that pursuit of elegance is really that thread that allows creators to kind of go, oh yeah, let's talk about that.
That's cool. So that's fun. So when you say engineering mindset, I'm thinking that engineers have a tendency to kind of break down what are the components of something that actually establish it or whatever. And so if you're telling a story in a product, not only are you creating, say, the performance cues that help people to engage the product better, the product works for them. I mean, it's interesting to me. Like I look at products, especially since I've been designing primarily footwear in the last 35, 38 years. When I look at products, I'm thinking of the human body coming in contact perpendicularly with the earth or whatever surface it's on, and that intersection, what is going on there? And so to me, that is an engineered, story. That is something that works towards performance. But in a lot of ways, it's also at that apex because it is of such interest, kind of like a car touching the ground. Because it is of such interest, you want to then express, architecturally express with your story or your beauty or whatever you're doing. So basically there is an engineering of those expressions, both performance and beauty.
Yeah. That's so it's cool because it's you find yourself being able to connect with people that are in different industries or categories because you're kindred spirits, and that's what I think's really neat, really cool.
That's fun, Brian, and not to interrupt every thought you have, but
that's okay. Hey, let me explain one thing, because I'm going to interrupt you to explain. I'm from New York, so interruption is a sign of affection. So interrupt away.
Yeah, start spreading the news. Here we go.
Yeah.
So here's an interruption. So I think that one of the wonderful revelations I had in shoe design is the similarities from my architectural training. So if my muse is a building, or if my muse is a piece of footwear or apparel, or even a brand concept or storytelling, you're basically working with the same kind of synapses in your mind, I think, and you're kind of connecting them to apply them to a solution, towards a solution, and within a certain context. So yes, all of that makes sense to me in terms of similarity. As designers and as creators, we're all kind of sharing a similar path. I was thrilled personally that I was thinking as I went through school that I would need to be an architect, because I would think that that's the way I'm going to reach fulfillment. When I was a little kid, playing with building blocks and drawing all kinds of pictures, and my mom goes, she says, well, you should become an architect because architects make lots of money. And I think it's because she's nervous that I'm going to become a starving artist, and I'm this kid who's obsessed with creativity or whatever. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to be an architect. That's 5-year-old first 3 or 4 word that I learned. But it's like I wanted to, but what I found is at that point I thought architecture was the highest form of art, or something that I really needed to be an architect. So when they formulated me towards shoes, and when that became a thing after working at Nike for a minute, at first I thought my career would just hit rock bottom, but really it became an opportunity to like, wow, okay, there's really no difference in terms of the satisfaction that I can get from doing a building or a shoe. And in some ways the shoe is a little more like a I don't know, like Andy Warhol, you can do 500 Marilyn Monroes or whatever. I mean, it's kind of like, you can proliferate. It's not just one building. So I found it to be quite satisfying.
That's cool. Cause when you were talking about your mom saying be an architect, I was thinking like, if you just told her I'm going to design shoes, she'd be like, what?
That's exactly what you would have said.
But that's turned out well.
Well, it's been a blessing. It's been a real blessing. It's almost, I like to believe, I'm also a believer. I'm a Christian. I think that things happen around, and so I look at the idea that in some ways there was a light shine on this industry, that suddenly sneakers became a form of expression. Yeah. Whereas before, maybe cars were one of the most personal forms of transportation expression. And it's like now sneakers suddenly became more personalized, became an opportunity. And that kind of, I was fortunate to be a part of that wave. And so it was like, wow. Then it became a respectable thing, because honestly, when they first said, hey, we were kind of going through a zone where there was actually a few layoffs going on. My coworker was let go, and they said to me, and they called me to the back room. So I felt like I was walking the plank,
Oh, yeah.
And then it was like, they said, well, how would you like to design shoes? And I said, oh, I always wanted to design shoes. And I was like, and I honestly left there driving home thinking, boy, my career has hit the bottom. I mean, I'm going to be designing shoes. But so anyway, so it's amazing what happens is suddenly the culture embraces a genre story or whatever, and then get to be a part of that.
Well, I mean, it was also, I mean, the timing, right? So much was going on, the fusion of culture, culture and sport and music. I mean, you had skateboard and hip hop and basketball, and I mean, it's just like
Michael Jordan. Oh my God.
Well, I have to. I mean, if we got to cut this out, I have got to tell you a Michael Jordan story, and I'm surprised. I'm surprised you and I have not crossed paths. Because I'm working in Chicago at an agency there, and we had the McDonald's account, and the guy I was working for said, "Yeah, there's a meeting at 3:00. We got to do some value meal promotion with a rookie from the Bulls."
A rookie from the Bulls, exactly.
And so I ended up doing Michael Jordan's first commercial. It was before Nike. It was before, it was, and it was for value meal, right? It was, I mean, it's embarrassing, but it was. That's what McDonald's does, right? They
really?
So it was, it was using him, and I had read an article in the Sun-Times after he scored like 48 points. It was like Cleveland or Boston. And the sports writer said Air Jordan in the article. And I go, ooh. I go, okay. So our campaign was Fuel for Air Jordan.
Oh, fun.
And we had air traffic controllers from Midway. They came in and they just did what they do. We said, it's Air Jordan Flight 23. Just do what you do when they take off. Fueling up, prepared for takeoff, cleared for takeoff. And that was the soundtrack. And it was, at the end, he did his, up in the air on the approach to slam dunk thing. And,
that's awesome.
And it was Fuel for Air Jordan. That was it. And then we got a call from, we knew the guys who did the first Air Jordan commercial, the creatives. And so they called us and they go, "You motherfuckers." it hadn't aired yet. They hadn't shot it yet.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's there were a lot of discoveries I think that were happening. Once again, a couple of things. I am not a Nike spokesperson, so I do not even want to take on too much articulation of Nike.
Yeah.
It's Wilson's perspective on some things, so you have to kind of be. I really want to make that disclaimer because that's not the deal. But I do think that there was a lot of discovering going on at the time. That and Mr. Jordan was amazing, and we were all on a ride with him and the expansion of storytelling of cultural capture through sport I think all of that was kind of new revelations, and we were all all playing in a new park or whatever.
Yeah.
The honor and the joy of being kind of this Black designer in this industry, and so I feel a need and a desire to really articulate my journey and hopefully inspire more journeys. I mean, it's more important to me to inspire more journeys than it is even to articulate my own. And I think I've come to that understanding as I've been writing a book. Because when you set out to write a book, it's like, I thought, okay, I kind of need a book. I'm getting ready. I'm going out speaking around and doing different things, and I kind of need a book with some philosophy. And you almost kind of have an idea that you need something before you actually conceive it. And so
I think it's called branding.
Yeah, right. There you go. I'm needing something. I'm branding something. That's awesome. Branding something before I conceive it. So I was working on that, and I realized down the road as I've been working on it, it started out very memoir and kind of like, well, because I've been working with some writers, because
Mhm.
when I would write stuff, I just haven't been that thrilled with it, and so I kind of wanted to get some writing with some
Mhm.
professionals, and in doing that, I've kind of been like, oh gosh, I don't even know that I want to read my own memoir, but
No, I know that feeling.
yeah, it's just one of those things. And so but then now it became more about design philosophy and even more about, hey, you can do this. Like the next generation, you can
Mhm.
embrace something and catch the wave and surf as well as anybody, because it's really
Mhm.
about a wave that's being generated. It's not,
Yeah.
and it's about catching the wave. It's not so much about, some particular skill of the board, I mean, or
Mhm.
whatever role I'm playing in that analogy.
Yeah.
So I think so to me, the design philosophy is what the book's kind of pointed towards, and also kind of like a, hey, you can do it too. And I also don't want to just, I mean, the shtick that I've been about has been more shoes, and that's been fun. I've helped to ride the wave of the industry in the shoe world, but that to me is just a thing. It's just been the focus. It's not in and of itself the end thing. I heard Bono, one of my favorite. I've been loving the book that I've been reading of his, which
Mhm.
is called Surrender, and it's a pretty cool book. And he actually reads it, and I'm doing the audiobook, so it's great
Oh,
to
that's
hear
cool. That's
him.
cool.
It's outstanding. But
Yeah.
one thing he talks about oftentimes is using celebrity as currency, and
Okay.
he for the causes and things and
Yeah.
that he's passionate about. And man, the guy, his passions are so fabulously articulated in this book, and I've been really enjoying that. But the notion of currency, so I'm wanting to, in the same way that I want to use currency for the next to inspire and hopefully,
Mhm.
inspire the next generation, and really for them to catch a wave. I mean, it's interesting. I think
Yeah.
much more, and I haven't even thought of it that way until now. But the notion of actually getting on the board and writing
Mm.
what's been given to them to
Yeah.
ride
Right. Right. Right.
is really the important thing.
That's a great insight because
Mhm.
with when digital came and everything was moving so fast, right? And new platforms, new media fronts were opening up left and right, and every new shiny thing was the silver bullet, right? And they're not, but everybody's chasing it, right? And it was this frantic series of wind sprints to the next thing. And what I used to say to clients, I'm not sure it had any impact, but what I used to say was, you don't need an expert.
Right.
You need somebody who can make sense of what's happening in real time. And I
That
think that's the riding the wave idea.
Yeah,
That's
that's
like,
beautiful. Yeah, your name
yeah.
of nail it, Brian. That's that. Yeah, no, I think that's totally it. And I love that because I think the spontaneity, even when I look back to designs that I've felt really fortunate or that
Hmm.
have turned out really good, sometimes the most profound, the best shoes that I've ever done were really were like done the quickest almost. I mean, it's
Yeah.
almost like it's just immediate and it
Hmm.
just kind of happens, and that alone, a lot of times that's the solution. Anyway, so
Yeah,
that's
no, that's no, it's great because creativity comes in bursts, right? You could sit
yeah,
down and then other times I mean, if it's been 4 or 5 days, you're like, oh, this is going to be a long grind. It's
right,
it's not
totally,
going to be it's not going to be quick and fast, and it's fickle. It is. It's like
yeah,
what Madeline Engel, I think, wrote a book about the fickleness of creativity and stuff, and that
mm,
and
that's
that it is a gift. It comes upon you, and you have to just be present to
right.
that moment, right? I don't think she's a believer. I think she's spiritual, but
Uh-huh.
but that
I
was a big book for a lot of people.
That's cool. I like your idea of the spontaneity piece, and I think I might want to engage some of that
Hmm.
in the book, because philosophically, what I'm talking about, I think really relate. It helps to embrace the spontaneity, embrace that. Because when Bogey and I were talking about it, part of my design philosophy or whatever, I spoke about it once initially at a church setting. They asked me to talk about create the creative process or something. And so I was thinking, okay, well, what do I think about it? And my take ended up being, I thought, hey, I'm going to give 3 points. And the talk was kind of like, it's your calling, and then you're creating, and then you're collaborating.
No, 3 points alliteration. Oh,
3 points of my calling.
Oh, that's a sermon.
Yeah, that's a sermon.
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. That's full on, man. Okay.
Go to lunch, man. It's like, okay, time for lunch. But anyway, but I thought of that, and then it actually kind of made sense in terms of call. But then what happened was, as I was going to bring the talk to a bunch of kids. They were actually like junior high and younger, and I changed the words to spark, explore, mix, and spark was what's that energy, whatever the thing, that the connection, that the aha moment, and the explore is all the possibilities of creating that's kind of between the solution, the end user, or opportunity. And so all of those possibilities is the explore piece. And then the remix is the opportunity. I think when, even in this conversation, when I'm talking to Brian and Bogey, it's like, okay, it remixes some thoughts and it remixes design. And so to me, it's about collaboration. So the calling, creating, collaborating is spark, explore, mix. And that literally may end up being the title name of the book. But that's kind of the three part story, because I think calling is underrated in the world, because we may not recognize kind of the God-shaped component of each one of us when it comes to whatever we're doing. And so the spark is literally put together. I mean, little did I know that when my mom wanted to kind of shape me so that I wasn't a starving artist, that, hey, God, he put me in that particular shaped basket to float me down the Nile River to the next or whatever. I mean, we all have a little bit of that. So we get to then step into whatever that is. And so anyway, that's where I think calling is huge, because then it's like, and I'm always, the older I've gotten, I'm just looking for sparks. I mean, even in this conversation, I'm fishing for where my heart finds the anointing, or finds the presence of a nugget of something that is of inspiration, or that gets me excited. Because that's where I think the answer is. And trusting that. The older you get, the more you trust that,
Right. Well, because you can look back, like right now you're talking about looking back with the Nile analogy, right? You're seeing the path, and it's not a path you would have taken. It's not a path you would have even thought of, and perhaps even rejected. And then look where it's taken you, right? And so Psalm 116 is, the lines for me have fallen in pleasant places, right? You look back. Nice. You're satisfied, right? And so,
absolutely. That's Psalms 115?
16.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. Ooh, great. Yeah.
I got a crazy mental trap for things like that.
No, I love that.
Well, speaking of mental traps, part of what you're experiencing in the creative process, I think, is so creative people, like you were talking about how, like, we're all mixed up in the cement's hardened, the joke. But what's really happening, I think, is creative people are inherently nonlinear thinkers.
Absolutely.
Right. So what you're constantly doing is this, that you're ping-ponging, zigzagging, bunny trailing, trying to put things together, right, and find new combinations, right? Because creativity, like clinically, you can define it as finding new associations between known things, right? So nothing's new under the sun, right? That's biblical. Right. And so all you can do is create from what's already created, right?
Yeah.
Like we can't speak it into being. We can't say let there be light, right? But
No.
but because we're made in the image of a creator, we have power, with our words to create blessings and curses. That's Moses. We're going off in a different podcast here, but
I love it.
The point, right, is that the creative process is finding new connections, new associations, right? And so creative people are constantly trying to put different things together and find more innovative, more elegant solutions to things, more surprising, more delightful, whatever it is. And I think part of what you're reflecting on with the 40 years at Nike and how, athletic wear fused with culture and it fused with fashion and a culture of celebrity and all of that alchemy kind of mixed together into a really powerful movement,
Right.
And you were right there. That wave was given to you, like you said, it was given to you and you wrote it. Look at you. Look at you. Look at me, Mom.
Look, Mom. Yay, no hands. Very, yeah. Cool. Very blessed. Thanks, man. Thank you, Brian. What was I thinking? I wanted to maybe make an illustration of what you're kind of describing. And I wish I had the shoe in my hand right now. I could go get the shoe. It's just in the other room. Or I could try to describe it. Let's see. Do you want me to try to describe it?
Go get the shoe.
I want both.
Get the shoe.
All right.
We gotta...
All right. Now we can talk shit about Wilson while he's not here.
We can, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
I'm finally back. So the funny thing that after I went away, I thought, I want to maybe share this whole story. So I actually had the honor, totally out of the blue. I never dreamed this would happen, but they wanted it. There was a shoe I worked on called the Air More Up Tempo, and they wanted to do a version of it that actually told my story. So the Air More Up Tempo, I'll show you, it was a shoe, probably my most popular shoe. So it kind of says air, air, and then I remember the crazy thing was when I worked on this, the marketing guy says, hey, he took something I was drawing. He says, hey, write the word air as big as you can on the side of the shoe. And I was like, oh, okay. And so and he actually literally took what I was drawing. He flipped it over and he wrote AIR in giant letters. I was like, huh. And I knew the types of airbags we could do at the bottom at the time. Right. And so a heel bag, a midfoot bag, a forefoot bag with a couple windows. So I knew we could do that. And so I did that. Well, and then next thing I knew, the quick thing was when I realized that, hey, the letters, the A and the R are so similar that you can literally flip them on the inside and outside of the shoe. So that was within like 20 minutes of sketching. It was like, that's about as big as you can write it.
Architecture,
architecture. It was thank you, buddy. It was very architectural. So anyway, so I worked on that. So that was kind of the beginning. Well, the fun thing was down the road, they decide, on this shoe, I remember when I worked on it first, I thought, that could have some legs, depending if people catch on. And then this was done back in 1996. When the down the road, they've released it now often. And so this has been one of our staples, one of our classic models. And so recently they were like, hey, we want to do a version of the Air More Up Tempo that tells your story. And I was like, well, that's pretty wild. Well, back in the day, this is actually a sketch that I did as an artist. Yeah. A sketch that I did, what I called Wilsonville. And it was a sketch, and they end up putting the sketch on the box.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And tell my story. And then, it kind of has my story, my picture on the inside and wow. Release the shoe and everything. And so, and the shoe was colored like the sketch. So this was the stuff I did this sketch. That was great.
That's cool.
And
they didn't even do that for Michael Jordan. They didn't give him his own box.
It was very once again, God does things above all we can ask.
Yeah.
And so this was, but that was part of the thing. And so creating the box and telling the story, and then and then the colors and all that kind of stuff. So basically, this shoe is telling my story. And then they even went as far as to make another version of it that actually spelled name, crazy, WIL, SON. So this is another one that just kind of came out, or at least came out for friends and family and
I was
whatever.
going to say, is that a limited edition? Like, I haven't seen. I mean, I'm probably not hanging out with the people that are wearing those, but I'm going to say I have not seen that.
Yeah, well, there are versions of this online, and you can kind of, or people,
wild.
I think people can get them a little bit. But I was given, it was a major, once again, a ridiculous honor. But but the fun thing that ties in, I think, to kind of our personal journey. Maybe I'll just tie it in this way. Is that I remember when I first worked on this shoe, and my sister, she says, well, that all that is what you used to always do for like Christmas gifts. Because for Christmas gifts, I'd always write everybody's name as big as I possibly could on the outside of the box. And so, in the same way, just kind of spreading the letters across the shoe. And so it's kind of, it's amazing how much in terms of spark, or how much personal kind of happens, your calling or just kind of who you are comes through in the most successful things you may do that actually is for the world. I mean, it's like there's a place where you can connect your story to a story that ties to all of humanity or something, or that could be inspired, that all of humanity might embrace. I think the creative process is so close to yourself. Like you're saying, it's hard to analyze, but it's kind of part of it's part of the way we breathe, or what we feel, or just kind of happens before you can actually articulate even. That, but it is very pervasive, and it goes straight from the heart out to the world.
Yeah, and I think because it is fickle, when you've been at it long enough, you don't panic if nothing comes right away, because you know it has its own timing in a way, and I think the great frustration is when you're onto something and you can't land it, like you can't share it, or you can't get it greenlit, and so you're like but and I think that's where it's amazing. There's something about the creative process, I think, inherent in it is joy, and the nature of joy is that it wants to be shared. Like joy, like when you think of in your life, when you experience something that is wonderful, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's a panoramic view over like a vista or the Grand Canyon, or you were at a great sporting event, or you saw double overtime and it was like, oh my God, or a great meal, or music, or an art exhibit. Even if you take pictures, like let me put it this way, your almost involuntary response is to turn to the person next to you and say, isn't that amazing? Right. If there's no one there.
Right. Yeah.
You're like, and then you take a picture, and then when you share it, you go, it doesn't really capture it. The joy hasn't been consummated because you can't share it.
Right. Well, that's beautiful.
And so I think in the end, it's another podcast, but I think that there's an element of that in the creative process, and which is why, even at age 50 or 60 or 70, like you were like a little school kid running with this thing you've discovered. Right. And you want to land it somewhere. You want at least one other person to go like, that's great.
Yeah. It needs, I don't want to say an audience, but it certainly needs an agreement, or it needs
agreement. It does. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about, helping other people catch the wave, ride the wave. I think it's creativity can get second guessed and can get dashed. It's so fragile. It's powerful. It's powerful as a force, but then it's fragile. Like it has to be handled really with reverence, and it's just the problem with the business world is
I like not. And I know you might want to say something, Bogey. I like the notion of reverence, because I think that it is divine. It's spiritual. There's something about it. I've heard Michael Jackson say that he that he'd be up all night working on something because he felt that if he didn't do it, the Almighty was going to give it to Prince or whatever.
There you go. Yeah.
But the reality is,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it's quite divvied up that way from on high, but I do think
Yeah.
I do think there is something about a reverent beauty of it that needs to be kind of captured and expressed or whatever.
Yeah, I think the sad thing about the world is because they've made a kind of secondhand decision about God. They miss the elevation and the narrative that comes with a belief in God.
And also, Brian, I would say, in some ways, we believers or whatever have not been really great at allowing God to be articulated in all of his, be magnified in all the majesty and all the amazement that God is. And we've kind of wanted to cerebralize or limit, theologize within our brains. All there is, the beginning and ending of God, and there's a mystery, and the word supports mystery, and there's we who have learned just how far away the next star is, let alone all the few stars that we see that are even in the Milky Way, that, and then the billions of galaxies. It's like, we have no idea, and God has not even given us a responsibility to understand all of that. Well, if it's like that, how can we possibly explain the beginning and the ending of all theology? I think that's a pretty arrogant concept in itself.
It totally is,
I'm a Calvinist, but I'm just joking.
But that's the nature of man is to domesticate and control, and man will do that with God too. I mean, it's and I think the Western Church has done that. We're now into the other podcast, but I think the Western Church has done that in that it's lost the kind of mystical Judaism element, which is like to a Jew, an ancient Jew, to say God spoke would have stopped you in your tracks.
Wow. Right.
That he actually spoke, and yet we're so casual about, God's speaking to me, or this is what God's saying, or I think this is what needs to happen. And the Western Church has taken the mystery, which I love to use that word because Moses says in Deuteronomy 29 that the secret things belong to God, but the things revealed belong to us and our children. So there's always something. There's always more, right? Yeah, and yet we think we've got the A to Z, and so we start getting dogmatic, and that's led, now that it's into politics, it's gotten ugly, just fugly, and it's really unfortunate because people are missing a God that they would hands down be attracted to.
Exactly. Hands down. And I love this, and where I think it can even come back full circle in the world of design is a lot of times we come up with an idea, and there's kind of a God moment of like, wow, wow, the letters are, that's a moment in time. And sure, the moment has been celebrated since 1996, but the reality is that if you're willing, that's happening all the time in a brand new way. I mean, don't just limit it to your shoes. Don't just limit it to a car or to anything. It's like aha. And right after you finish that aha, there's another one if you're willing to listen. You're willing to be open because I just think creativity and everything is pervasive and it's endless and it's and it doesn't. I mean, I remember when I first started designing shoes, I was like, how many? I remember there was a line. It was I think we read somewhere where it said, "How many ways can you design a shoe anyway?" For crying out loud, it's kind of like what? Well, actually, they're infinite, and we haven't even scratched the surface. I mean, it's like everything, and that's just shoes, So So
well, what's interesting about that is there was a so. In 2006, the New York Times, the Sunday magazine, had an article called "The Brand Underground," written by Rob Walker, and that was like an important article for me when I read it, because what Rob did in that, he was talking about all these young, like 19, early 20-year-old kind of street kids that were basically creating brands out of thin air.
Mm.
And the lead person that he looked at, the lead case study, was this kid, Aaron, I can't remember his last name, Jewish kid from Lower East Side, who created a New York thing. And it was like the word anything, but the NY was like the Giants.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
And
right.
so it was a New York thing. And it was initially like skateboard and T-shirts and hats and all that kind of, but then it got into like playlists, and it got into fashion, and he went to Japan, and then, you know, it was like, and then there were parties. And so it became this brand that could be attached to so many different types of media and product. Right.
Yep.
And he talks about others. And then he says this thing that, I'll distill it a little better than he wrote it, because I think he was trying to piece it together in real time as he wrote the article. But it's like, historically, branding has been, I have a product. Now I come to you and say, give me an idea to help me sell the product.
Oh, right.
That's been branding, right?
Yeah.
He said now, and it's really because of the internet and that you have an on-demand audience and everything's pull now. It's not push, right?
Okay.
So now, he said, it's flipped around where it's like, I have an idea and the product is the medium.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah.
So like the light bulb went off, like Zipcar. Remember when Zipcar came out? And you could just go rent a car for an hour or 4 hours or whatever, and the gas, and, you know, it was like, that was great. Well, they said, we're a rental car company. And it's like, well, no, you're not.
Right.
You're actually a brand for a new generation of consumers who issue ownership for access, right? I want the milk, not the cow, right?
Yeah.
So the car is just the vehicle for that idea, right? So when you understand that, all of a sudden, who else is like that? Oh, Spotify, same thing, kindred spirit, access without ownership, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of mindset, right, in marketing is important, and a lot of marketers just still haven't gotten that.
Yes, that's beautiful. I think that things like Uber, you know, Airbnb.
Oh yeah.
I think you're right. I think that products are simply the intersection of a need, or the intersection of a human, you know, human
desire.
Desire or engagement.
Yeah. And I think that if you truly understand people and how they're wired, not the trending temporal stuff, but really the way, you know, the deep desires that people have, and the good things that they pursue or want, and you find your company or your product, like there's a way that I can meet that or address that or enhance that or connect that, then the product's just a medium for this idea, right? Which is a, you know, and I think that's that it's very hard to describe in theory, but you can definitely describe it when you, I mean, we're working with very some very B2B companies like data centers and stuff, and like language training and stuff. But when you understand, like, language training or cultural training is really a way, we have a line we're using where the world makes more sense when we understand each other.
Okay.
You know? And so all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not learning a language. That's the vehicle or the conduit for me being able to communicate with somebody. Absolutely. Or understand somebody or connect. And so understanding is really kind of the key driver on that. And so people, just trying to help people understand how to, which is the whole meaningful thing, is where your product fits into kind of an anthropological framework.
Exactly. You know? Yeah, exactly.
You know?
You know, is it language? Is it connection? What is it that we're after? Because it's like one of the fun. I saw an image. I don't know if you ever saw that. You may have. You can look it up online. But an image of when when LeBron James recently broke the record for most points in a game and most points in a career.
Yeah.
So, it was Kareem's record, but he had broke the record, and there's like an image of LeBron taking that shot, and then behind him you've got like everybody in this section with their phone capturing it. Yeah. So as opposed to maybe engaging the moment, they're kind of capturing the moment, or for possibly posting it, to a bunch of people who, so they may not, like, nobody who's experiencing it. And then on the front row is actually Mr. Phil Knight, the Nike owner, and he's sitting there and he doesn't have a phone. He's just sitting there watching. He's just taking it in. And the guy is a little bit almost like a Where's Waldo, in that he has been in so many amazing sporting moments. I've been watching Tiger Woods do his thing when he first was coming on the scene in the U.S. Amateur, or just whatever. He's kind of been there, and he's kind of in the moment. But today there's such a, it's almost like the moment becomes a vehicle of something else, and it's like, maybe we got to be kind of careful about that. What role does AI play? What role does IG play? What role does anything play in our actual journey or our mid journey? What role does anything play in our actual path of life? And not to put it in the wrong place.
And I don't think if you're born into that, I don't know if you have the ability to step outside of it and ask that question, but it is crazy. There's an old story, I don't remember a lot from grammar school, but I remember a priest. I went to a Catholic grammar school, and wore the tie and all that stuff.
Yes.
And the priest, he was a World War II chaplain, a guy from Ireland. And he was kind of a mean, pretty strict fellow. But he told a story one time when he was really young, and it was at the tail end of World War II. I think it was pretty much over, but he was still in Europe, and he was in Ireland, and there was a guy in the Jeep driving him around, kind of the road along the cliff's edge where you have the view of the water and the sunset and everything. And he asked the guy to stop so he could take a picture. And it then, it was old school, right? It was like 40s. And so he stopped with his little Kodak Instamatic, whatever, and took the photo, and then got back in the Jeep, and the guy just stared at him. And he said, "What?" And the guy says, "Aren't you going to look at it?" But it's your point.
Right. Exactly. It's more about the capture than the, than the actual even engage of it. Yeah.
Well, isn't that, I'll jump in here, because it's also interesting the way we process information, right, as humans. So going way back to band, because I went to band when I was a kid, the way you learned music, looking at sheet music as opposed to memorizing it, right? It actually stored the music in a different part of your brain. Yeah. So if you played music using sheet music, and you were actually reading sight reading, you wouldn't memorize it. Right. But then if you memorized the song, you couldn't play it by sheet music because you memorized it.
Right.
And there's something to be said about, in class, you're taking notes, right? The very nature of you writing it down, it's like tells your brain not to memorize it. And so maybe there's something along the lines of you capturing a moment with your phone that then it automatically allows you not to enjoy that moment.
No, I love that. And can I kind of dance on that thought for a second? I mean, because part of my joy has not only been product creation, but music. So music's played a big role. And one of the, so I'm going to go back a while ago. One of the first musical things that I learned, where I really felt I understood what I think you kind of described, the difference between, say, read music or field music. I learned Benny and the Jets, Elton John, and so I'm learning. So when you're playing that, it was one of those things where, like, I remember hearing it the first time, and I remember kind of the vibe, and I was like, gosh, this song's got a lot of vibe. It's got a lot of stuff in it, and it's almost like you have an opportunity rather than to try to read the music, of how you play it, or trying to get the groove and the left and the right, and a lot. But if you learn the song, then you get to enter in and play it, and you and Elton get to dance in it, and you get to play your version of his song. And yes, you're playing Mini the Jets, but you don't necessarily have to play it exactly the way it is on the sheet. You get to you understand the vibe and the groove of it. And I think so much music is like that. I mean, whenever you see a person doing a cover or whatever at a bar or something, it's like you get to kind of understand that person's interpretation of something that you've also entered into at another place. And I think that's part of where the action all happens, is when the person gets to express it their way and not just read it as the moment.
With one exception.
Okay.
And that is Benny and the Jets, and you're singing it in the shower, and I can't hear the music.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You gotta let yeah, right. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's hilarious. But it's an opportunity. I think that what technology does, and I had the honor of speaking at a Q conference recently. So, which is actually, Q has become Think, THINQ, which Think is, I won't get into what their acronym is. It's a Christian organization. It's really great. And so it's great. It's like theology, history, inquiry, THI, N is nuance, and Q is questions. So it's kind of like they go kind of deep, and it's kind of like a TED sort of thinking, but more from a Christian perspective. Anyway, so I got to think of this, speak of the Q, but one of the things I talked about, one of the things was, and I discussed this with my manager, this friend of mine, Kim Kinney, was like the whole idea of that technology's primary role is, technology's superpower is speed. As humans, our superpower is empathy. It's love. There's a lot of things that we get to bring to the table that technology will never be able to articulate. And
Right.
And if it's capturing a picture, or if it's reading a really, really delineated, chord chart or whatever, reading a really delineated sheet music, all of that stuff is just, it's an attempt at kind of capture, but when we engage our humanness, when we engage our superpower, which is to really connect with people and to connect with others, and to just, that's where the opportunity, that's when the real stuff comes alive.
Yeah, and I think that really is, for me, since AI has been kind of in the news, like for the last 2 years, right? And some of it has been hysterical, and some of it is AI cannot do. AI excels at objective tasks.
Right. Very objective.
And what it can't do is subjective things. It can't do that. And that's inherently human. And those are relational, creative, that kind of, in that milieu, right?
Exactly.
And all it can do is imitate that, but it will never create anything new out of that. And so, in fact, AI is the antithesis of creativity, because it's essentially prescriptive analytics on steroids. So what it's doing is it's going to scan everything in mankind's database on that query and give you the most probable answer.
Right.
The most probable is not creative.
No, it isn't, because it's based on the past, or it's based on
the mean, the average, the most probable. And so the creativity, finding new connections between known things we talked about earlier, the delight of being surprised, something unexpected is presented to you. AI, machine learning can't do that. It can't do that. And so I think if people are trying to figure out how to use AI and how not to, it's just use it for objective tasks and free up humans to do the subjective things that we excel at, right? Yeah. We don't excel at speed. We don't excel at precision.
Right.
right?
Right.
Let the machine do that. So
Exactly.
it's not super complicated, but the problem is you can't police who gets to use it.
No,
And
no.
so the motivation for, like, why are you using it? If you're using it to take repetitive objective tasks off of someone's table so they can do higher value things, great. If you're doing it to reduce payroll, create more margin, not great.
No, exactly.
So we'll see where
There's
that
a-
all goes.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that it's, I don't fear, we don't fear it. To me, it's just another form of speed, another form of getting at something
Right.
better and more accurate and quicker. And it's kind of like, like I heard that back in the 40s, the ballpoint pen was treated just like a computer today. I mean, it was like,
Really?
it's like, wow, the ballpoint pen is like,
Yeah.
whoa, it's taking everything to another level that we'll never, we will never be able to capture, or to kind of, it's opening up so many doors, and I imagine the printing press had fears around it, but
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think that anything just kind of has an opportunity to, if we just look at it as something that it's another tool. It's a tool, and AI is a great, another tool. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
let me throw one more thing into the mix. Like, humans are inherently lazy, right? Right. We're lazy, and then we're also a little bit wasteful. We don't always tend to maximize things, right? We have these devices in our pockets that are basically supercomputers, but what do we use it for?
Right. Do you
So
think
that's
it's
the other question.
I'll tell you what my kids use it for is they put funny faces on me.
It's, to me, I wonder, okay, maybe it's lazy, and maybe that's what it is. And maybe it is. Maybe we're always looking for an opportunity to do less or do it simpler. Maybe that's a an insatiable pursuit. Maybe I don't know. It can also be a motivator to advancement. Maybe it is. Anyway, I'm trying to think it through, because I think we are looking for ways of being amused and of remixing and getting to a new, just another take on it. I mean, when I think of the remix, I think that's been so awesome in music, especially like hip hop or something. When they'll take something that's familiar, and then they will use the chorus, and then they'll come back with the modern verses or whatever. Remix it in today, and so that. But I think that's human passion to always kind of move to another level at something.
One of my favorite, I just got while you're talking about it came to mind. One of my favorite, it happens so much, the remix, but one of my favorites, probably the first time I really was like appreciative of the remix, was PM Dawn, when they did the one song, I can never remember the titles, Standing in the Awe of You or something, and it uses Spandau Ballet, True.
Oh yeah.
And they did a back and forth between, it's such a beautiful, it's still today, it holds up. I listen to that. I still have it on my playlist. It's fantastic.
So cool. Yeah, no, it's cool. And I think that's what has been the answer. Like everything is referenced, and then we get to go to another level, and that's like what Don was doing. They were referencing something, and then they were taking it to another level. And that's
yeah.
I'm inspired by Jungian thought. Like I've read where he says like the four stages of life, and he kind of says there's the athletes. That's kind of when you're coming into your body and you're kind of learning that you're kind of coming into your body. And then the second stage he's called the warrior. So the warrior is where you're kind of amassing and you're creating, and you're basically you're building your family, and you're building your business, and so your warrior phase. The third phase is kind of like he's calling the statement phase, which is almost like not so much how much you can amass, but how much you can maybe give away. It's not so much the breadth as it is the depth of what life is. So you're kind of moving in a statement phase. And the fourth phase is kind of like almost a sage, but it's that you're kind of getting to where you realize the truths that are in the physical, the athlete or the warrior or the statement, they all have their shortcomings, and none of us are, as human beings, are really that ideal or perfect, and we don't have long for this world, and we're going to another place. And so it's kind of like so the sage, you're kind of like more about passing on the truths or whatever of all of that. And so for me, I love this conversation because I feel like it's very full of kind of sage thought. It's full of like the why behind the what or whatever, and really, and that's what I think we need to pursue, especially with marketing or products or whatever.
And getting more age diversity in it. I mean, the problem is, like, I can sit down. I mean, I'm sure sometimes I bore people, but I can sit down with people half my age and say things that they haven't thought of yet.
Right.
Imagine that.
Imagine that.